Hey Ronak, hey, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Hey Ronak, now I think we can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Let's give everyone a couple of more minutes. People are just beginning to trickle in here.
Awesome.
All right, I think we have enough people. We can start.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. Hi everyone. Welcome to Beans Recruiting Tech webinar series. This is Parnika from Beans Route. And I want to thank everyone for, sparing time from your busy ISP lives to join us for today's session. Of course, we hope to make this, very informative. We hope to keep this very interactive. So please feel free to, raise hands or if you have any questions in the chat. Of course, I am joined here today by Shivam, our subject matter expert. Shivam heads our recruiting. And, we do these webinars monthly, typically every Thursday, every third Thursday a month. And the idea behind these webinars is to, of course, like recruiting is a core component of every ISP's business. The idea behind these webinars is to bring you some helpful pieces of information as we do this ourselves. We are now helping almost 100+ contractors across US. So every job market is different. Every ISP that I talk to does recruiting. A lot of the ISPs that I talk to actually do recruiting for their business themselves. And so again, the idea with these webinars is to bring you some, hacks and some perspectives and some ideas from the same challenges that we also face as recruiters. And we want to share these with you guys so you can, recruit better, retain better. And in the same way, in the past, we have talked about several topics, like lead generation strategies, driver attrition. And of course, today we're going to be talking all about the AVP program. So we want to deep dive into the AVP program. What does it entail? What does it include? How is it? How is the hiring for AVP different from regular hiring? And so for this reason, we wanted to invite a special guest to today's webinar. So meet Ronak Shah. He is a part of our recruiting team, and he has been an ISP himself out of Austell. The idea was to, bring in someone who has actually had an experience running an AVP program, because towards the later part of the Q&A section, we'd love to get into, some of the unique challenges that AVP poses. So we'll get into a Q&A section. So, but without any further ado, I'd let Shivam do the talking. So Shivam, tell us all about the AVP program, and yeah, feel free to take it away.
No, thank you so much. Thanks, Parnika. Thank you everyone for joining us. Like Parnika said, from your busy ISP life, we appreciate this. We hope to keep this brief, but at the same time informative enough that it adds some value. So, jumping right into the topic, the AVP program was something FedEx Ground introduced a couple years ago in the middle of the pandemic, when we were facing shortages of everything from drivers to trucks. And as a recruiter, having recruited for every type of driver of FedEx Ground, in my humble opinion, and just again from maybe an outsider's perspective, I feel that the AVP program adds flexibility and adds value to a FedEx contractor like very few things in the rigid FedEx ISP world do. So just the way we want to structure this session, like Parnika said, we want to keep it interactive. So please ask questions. We're happy to answer them as we go along. But I'll give a brief introduction to the AVP program for those who are less informed of it. I then want to speak of the kind of demographics you'd be targeting when you're recruiting for AVP drivers, and I want to talk about the challenges of running an AVP program and what that requires from an enterprise level, and how one should approach it. So again, very briefly, the AVP program is a program that allows FedEx contractors to use their employees' vehicles to make deliveries. That pretty much means you hire employees who use their own personal vehicles. It could be sedans, pickup trucks, and anything in between, basically anything less than 10,000 pounds. And they'd come to the terminal, they'd use that, load it up, and use that to deliver packages like anyone else would. The slight difference is that you need two approvals here. One is for the driver, second is for his or her car. And I'll just get into that in a bit. The FedEx contractor would effectively get into a lease agreement with the AVP driver to use his vehicle, and obviously his vehicle would need to get have a prominent badging of FedEx Ground, like you put on your rental cars or rental trucks as you take it. The slight misconception a lot of people have is that these are 1099 contractors. They're not. FedEx requires them to be W-2 employees. So I want to be very clear in any communication that I have henceforth. An AVP driver is a W-2 full-time or part-time employee covered under your workman's comp. Just starting how to get an AVP driver onboarded is very similar to an L10 driver, because effectively he still needs a clean background, a clean MVR, run via First Advantage. You pretty much run him like an L10 driver. It's a different category, but no drug test required, no medical card, so it's a lot faster for an approval process. However, that's just the approval for the driver. The vehicle requires a couple steps, to be done before that is approved by FedEx. Basic stuff, it needs to be less than 15 years old. It needs to have curb weight of less than 10,000 pounds. It needs to have active personal insurance. not your insurance. It has to be on the driver's personal insurance. And that does take 4 to 5 days. It's a slightly manual process. There's no first advantage there. You just have to fill up a form and submit it to your terminal, and obviously a couple pictures and some supporting documents. But all in all, it's a slightly different process than just normal L10 or L20 driver recruiting. So that is the AVP program in very brief. And obviously, if anyone has questions, please ask. We'll get into it in detail. But the first point I wanted to address about this webinar, and the reason we wanted to speak to you about this, is like I started with, this is a powerful program, but we feel like a lot of contractors are missing out on the opportunity to leverage this correctly. So let me start with understanding who is the demographic and who is an AVP driver, right? So over the last almost a decade, we've seen an explosion of the gig economy. We've seen from food delivery to Ubers to everything in between, to the point that Amazon, Walmart all have their own flex positions. Apple's experimenting with that as well. We have a vast range of grocery delivery startups, cannabis delivery startups, everyone leveraging these gig workers. Gig workers are typically people who act as 1099 contractors in their mind. They take up jobs as independent contractors in their mind. They're typically below 30 years of age, and they're chosen the gig economy work for multiple reasons. We all know that today there's no dearth of job opportunities available, but a gig economy worker, it's very important to understand this. A gig economy worker is mostly someone who has, maybe he's at school, or maybe he's taking care of someone. Maybe he has to go pick up a child at 3 p.m. from school, but they have certain restrictions to their schedule that forbid them from taking up a typical 8 to 5, 8 to 7 job. And that would forbid him from working with you maybe full time, maybe 6 days a week. But he's available at certain flexible schedules. So that's the first key demographic point. The second demographic point is what motivates a gig economy worker. So over the last few years, majority of the companies that use gig economy workers have motivated them by the potential of earning an outsized return on their time if they give in the effort and the hours. That being said, if an Uber driver works smartly, he has a chance of earning $27, $28, $30 an hour. Similarly, if an Amazon Flex driver makes his deliveries faster, he has the opportunity of earning a lot more than normal. And that is the key motivator for anyone who's looking for a flexible delivery job. That, hey, if I put in the hours, if I learn the route, if I understand the technology, and if I can work smart, is there a possibility for me to earn more than the $17, $18 an hour that I would have earned otherwise in a regular job? And these 2 points is what it is very important to keep in mind when designing your AVP program, and then obviously recruiting drivers for it. For example, AVP drivers are typically paid in different ways. So some people pay them per hour, some people pay them per stop, some people pay them in a combination of both. Our submission to you is whatever you do, you have to make sure that your interests of making the most amount of stops per hour and the gig worker's interest of earning the most per hour is aligned, to the point that you have to show him a path that, hey, if you learn your route properly, if you do your job, if you turn up at 8 a.m. or 11 a.m., whatever that time being, and if you make these deliveries faster, there is a possibility for you to make $30, $35 an hour, if not more. And if you're able to design a program that incentivizes them to work as hard as possible, I can assure you, you are going to get amazing AVP drivers who will go above and beyond. And they might even be people you end up recruiting full time if they're available. That being said, an AVP driver has some, mostly will have some issues in scheduling. He will not be available at any time you need him. And that is another part why a lot of contractors just, I've seen, shy away from the AVP program, that they just don't want to put up with all of that. However, there are two ways to look at this. If one is able to accommodate their schedule, be a little flexible with them, work with them for a couple of days a week rather than getting the standard 6. If you're able to allow them a later dispatch of say 11 a.m. or 12 noon, or if you allow them to come back by 3 p.m., you'd be able to tap into these resources which you wouldn't otherwise be able to. And you don't have anything to lose, because it's not like you're dedicating a truck specially for them. It's not like you have to keep resources separately for them. If they can do 40 stops in a particular day for 3 hours, that's all you keep aside for them. But that does obviously bring in scheduling nightmares. That does obviously bring in issues that you have to understand everyone's individual problems and constraints and design your program around them. Since we have Ronak on this call, he's obviously run a successful AVP program in his ISP life. Ronak, anything I'm saying, does that resonate with you? Can you walk us through some horror stories before we get into the good stuff?
Yeah, so the front end is tough, right? Understanding their schedules, making them go through. So you have to work with the station, which is working with the headquarters in Pennsylvania to get them approved. So the front end work is a lot, right? Setting them up for success, getting the route cut in DRO properly so that no large packages go to them, understanding what they can do and can't do. So you have that as like a disclaimer, right? You have to put in a lot of hours front end. If you have a good BC and they know DRO and they can create small package routes or whatever the case is, there's a lot of flexibility that AVPs can add, and profitability as well, right? Because you're able to cut routes, which we'll get into. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, just to, add to what Ronak was saying, by cutting routes, you're able to run fewer trucks. You might have more AVP drivers running smaller routes, but by running fewer trucks, you're obviously being able to save on certain costs, certain, insurance, maintenance, and all of those things with running trucks. So the most common question that we get paid, is about how to pay. So Ronan, can you tell us, how did you pay your AVP drivers?
Yeah, so just a little bit of brief history about my CSA and how it was set up, right? When I bought, I bought 19 routes. This was pre-COVID, thinking, 19 routes is no big deal, right? And then all of a sudden, March hit, and I was running 35 routes. So basically, we didn't have enough trucks. We didn't have enough drivers to do this. So anyways, long story short, I had 3 different CSAs. So one was on the east side of the terminal, and 2 other ones were on the west side. So when you look at it, I had rural routes, I had city routes, and I had semi-rural routes. So I utilized AVP in all of them, and my pay structure was based on the travel time. So I would pay them per stop, right? Understanding AVP will hit the one that was on the east side, which is only 10 to 12 minutes away from the terminal. They could do about 50, 60 stops in 2-3 hours and be done. So understanding how long it took, and then creating per stop rate. So if they're able to do 20 to 30 stops an hour in that area and hit a bunch of smalls, and get all of that out during peak times, and even on on weekends and stuff, to reduce the amount of routes, I was able to pay them per stop, but I did it based on the routes or the geography of the routes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've seen people pay by the hour. I've seen people pay by stop, and I've seen stuff in the middle. I've seen people get creative about paying by the hour and then add in a mileage bonus, and then add in like a per stop bonus above a certain threshold. My only suggestion is this. I mean, you have to look at your contract, you have to look at your commercials and financials and what makes sense. But whatever the pay is, like I've mentioned in past webinars, simplicity is key. The fastest way to lose an employee is miscommunication. And the more jumbled up the pay structure is, the bigger the issue would be in terms of communicating with him, and then more confusion comes up. So my suggestion is keep it simple. Whatever they communicate, every route is different, every CSA is different. So you could have multiple pay structures, and it's all available for the drivers to understand and pick from maybe.
So Shivam, we have a quick question in the chat from Ali. What kind of mileage bonus did you offer?
So, again, every contractor is different. So I've seen people offer, like again, in California, we had a contractor who was offering 30 cents a mile. They had decently dense, they had like 70 to 80 miles, being driven every day. So the idea is that some people offer mileage pay just to offset gas prices, especially in this scenario where gas prices are elevated. That's a concern for a lot of candidates. So we assure them that it's offset by paying this. So we remove the miles driven component out of it, and then the balance compensation is for their time. Again, every CSA is different. A lot of people who serve in rural communities, which are 40, 50 miles a day, mileage doesn't come up as a question with a lot of the candidates. They just want to know, can I make $30 an hour? But yes, if you have a rural route, if you're driving 100 miles, mileage is a question that's going to come up. And all the candidates want to know is, hey, are my tolls and is my gas going to be reimbursed? So when I'm calculating what I get paid, I'm going to take the tolls and gas out of the equation.
So Shivam, this complex pay structure, do you have difficulties communicating this to, the drivers? And
all the time, all the time we struggle. That's the most difficult thing, right? Like I mentioned in the past, candidates typically have a distrust for employers, especially in this demographic. Added to that, FedEx contractors, because they're just so busy, struggle to create like transparency. You're not Uber who can give a breakup every week of the pay and all the different components of the pay. So my suggestion will always be keep it simple. It makes it simple for you to calculate. It makes it simple for your team to calculate payroll. It also makes it simple for the drivers to understand and just less confusion. But I understand certain CSAs are unique, and I understand that you have to create, some certain variables, but try to limit it as far as possible.
Yeah, so the way I handled it, great question, Ali. The way I handled it was, okay, so it took someone 15 minutes to get to their first stop. I basically, instead now I had a rural route, it took somebody 45 minutes to an hour to get to their first stop. So take that component and say, okay, if I'm paying $2.50 in the 15-minute area, I'm going to bump their other person's pay to $3 or $3.15 to compensate, right? I'm always a believer to keep it simple because, communicating complex details to drivers is very hard, and they will definitely lose some things in translation, and then they'll be like, well, I see my paycheck, but this is not what I was expecting. So keep setting the expectations and maintaining them. It's just a lot simpler if you just have it per stop. So I'm a big proponent for keeping it simple and making sure that you do it per stop. But everybody's CSA is different,
It is. Let me get to the second part of running an AVP program before we run out of time, and it is a vital part which I believe people need to understand. So like we've already discussed, who is an AVP driver. Finding it is not the challenge if you can get a lucrative pay structure set up. And every contractor, no matter your CSA, you can create an alignment with an AVP driver to interest him. However, like I mentioned, every AVP driver comes with their sets of baggages, more often than not. But there's a reason why he's applied for an AVP position rather than a full-time delivery driver job. And that is something that one needs to understand. If you want to run 5 AVP routes 7 days a week, you probably need 30 to 40 approved AVP drivers in your pool. So some people might be able to just do 50 stops, 3 hours a day. Some people might be able to work 9 hours a day for 4 days a week. One needs to understand that and deal with those complexities. One needs to have a certain degree of patience to deal with everyone, especially when they're starting off for a couple of weeks, and then you obviously understand them better. However, the way I suggest, and it's the dream scenario, but if you've got a pool of 30 AVP drivers, you typically would send them out like every maybe Saturday or Sunday when you're scheduling for the next week. You would send out a group text telling them the available routes on the available days and the estimated pay for each of them. And they would be able to select and sign up for them. And it would effectively be a first come first. That's the same strategy one can take when you're using an AVP to cover a call off. If it's 9 a.m. and your driver hasn't shown up, you've got 100 stops sitting, you could just send out a mass text to the other 25 AVP drivers who are not driving that day. And I can bet you good money that you will find a couple of them to come spit out that route and complete it. And that is where the AVP program is so successful. It is flexible. It allows you to plan. FedEx keeps saying plan for every contingency possible, but we know that planning for every contingency has a cost associated to it. This is one of those situations where there's no fixed cost associated with it. It's a little bit of effort, which is upfront, but it pays dividends. Once an AVP driver is approved and working for you, he'd be available to work for you for a couple of years. We've seen AVP drivers, bounce around for at least a couple of years with every contractor because it's flexible. If he's not in the mood, he'll stop driving for you for 2 weeks and then he'll come back if he needs a paycheck. And that is kind of the beauty of this program. It offers flexibility on both ends. You're not committed to keeping someone. At the same time, I have seen a lot of our contractors use the AVP program as a no-cost training ground where they pick up the best drivers from that program and graduate them to a full-time delivery driver. So think about that. You're not paying 2 weeks of training. That AVP driver knows exactly what he's signing up for. So your churn is going to be a lot lower. And he pretty much paid for his own training in a way. All you have to do is be patient with them, put up with their scheduling issues, and deal with the last minute heartaches that they're going to give you. And if your organization, from your BC to the owner, can commit to that for a couple of weeks, you will see the results. I have no doubt in that. I have seen this enough. We've helped contractors, especially in peak, recruit 50, 60 AVP drivers, and they have been extremely successful. They've been able to cut costs. They've been able to make Sundays somewhat profitable. They've been able to reduce their dependencies on rentals, and they've been able to improve service level by taking care of call-offs. Yeah, sorry, Parnika, you were saying.
Thanks, Shivam. Yeah, we're about to wrap up. We have about 4 minutes left. I also wanted to quickly touch upon the technology aspect of
Yes.
how you can use technology to run these AVP routes. We offer, like within Beans Route, we have something called proof of delivery, which is a feature that can be used as a substitute to a scanner. If anyone here is interested in learning more about that feature, I'm happy to get on a Zoom call. We also have some materials with regards to the AVP that we worked on last year. So happy to include that in our email as well. So please feel free to email us at fxgrecruiting@beans.ai for any questions and if you're looking to get those materials. And any other questions, we're happy to answer questions now. I guess we can do Q&A now.
We can, and while we're waiting for those questions, I'll just wrap it up. Parnika's absolutely right. So again, one of the keys to success for a new AVP driver is to understand the routes. Unlike a full-time driver, he's not going to be doing ride-alongs. He's going to be going out alone on his own from day zero. So good mapping and routing software is essential. At the same time, a lot of contractors, again, especially during peak, are concerned of giving scanners to people who work 2 days a week or not full-time employees. So that's a lot of scanners held up, and that's an expensive asset that you have to worry about. So obviously Beans has a solution for that. and we'd be happy to talk about that if anyone's interested. But a routing software and a good, technology play is essential for the first couple of weeks to get the AVP driver set up for success.
Absolutely. All right. I think if there are no more questions, we can wrap this up. Give you guys 2 minutes of your day back. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Shivam. Thanks, Ronak. And then we'll see you next month.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.